Once I heard the OP was what was hit, the first thing I thought of was Ryan. I knew that if there was going to be one person left up there to hold that position, he would be one of the few in the world that could do it.
With the amount of RPGs, hand grenades, machine gun fire that we were receiving, it seemed like there was no lull in the firefight. It was frustrating for a little while because it felt like they always had fire superiority over us, and then we started turning the tide of that. But I could look back and see the amount of fire that the OP was taking. It was just a huge dust cloud and explosion after explosion after explosion, and you knew that nothing good was happening up there.
For our forces in Afghanistan, the Battle of Wanat was one of the most fierce of this entire war. 48 Americans, along with their Afghan partners, were manning their small base deep in a valley when they were attacked by some 200 insurgents. And those insurgents seemed determined to overrun an even smaller post just outside the base, an elevated patch of boulders and sandbags defended by just 9 American soldiers. Soon, under the relentless fire, all 9 of these men were wounded or killed. Insurgents broke through the wire, and that little post was on the verge of falling, giving the enemy a perch from which to devastate the base below. Against that onslaught, one American held the line. Just 22 years old, nearly surrounded, bloodied but unbowed. The soldier we recognize today with our nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor, Staff Sergeant Ryan M. Pitts.
You know, a lot has been said about the greatest generation, and I concur. World War II era vets really saved our worldly society from devastation. But we have a pretty doggone great generation as well. When you have somebody like Ryan that is as inclusive as he is absolutely adamant about this award is not about a platoon or a company, battalion, brigade, but about all those that supported the battle, the aviators, the medics, the communicators, the higher headquarters, and you know, everybody that came behind us. It's connects more people to the battle and to the services. I think people without anybody in the military, any branch of service, that hears or meets people like Ryan Pitts, Kyle White, or Sal Junta, or many others, they'll feel more connected to the military, and they'll realize, hey, these are some pretty good people that had vastly different options, but they chose to serve in harm's way.
I think one of the biggest things about Wanat that Ryan has been recognized for is for what he did for us by staying at the OP. You always want to protect your brothers in combat. You love them very much. You always want to do that, but it's not an obligation. So he didn't have to stay there. But being the type of person that Ryan is, I couldn't see him doing anything else. It's what he was prepared to give his life to do, and all the other guys, all the 9 guys that we lost, felt the same exact way.
Up at their tiny post, Ryan and his team were being pounded. Almost instantly, every one of them was wounded. Ryan was hit by shrapnel in the arm and both legs and was bleeding badly. Already 3 American soldiers in that valley had fallen, and then a 4th. As the insurgents moved in, Ryan picked up a grenade, pulled the pin, and held that live grenade for a moment, then another, and then another, finally hurling it so they couldn't throw it back. And he did that again, and he did it again. Unable to stand, Ryan pulled himself up on his knees and manned a machine gun. 8 American soldiers had now fallen, and Ryan Pitts was the only living soldier at that post. He whispered into the radio. He was the only one left and was running out of ammo. I was going to die, he remembers, and made my peace with it. And then he prepared to make a last stand. Bleeding and barely conscious, Ryan threw his last grenades. He grabbed a grenade launcher and fired nearly straight up, so the grenade came back down on the enemy just yards away. One insurgent was now right on top of the post shooting down until another team of Americans showed up and drove him back. As one of his teammates said, had it not been for Ryan Pitts, that post almost certainly would have been overrun. Even with reinforcements, the battle was not over. Another wave of rocket-propelled grenades slammed into the post. 9 Americans were now gone, and still the fighting raged. Ryan worked the radio, helping target the airstrikes that were hitting danger close, just yards away. And with those strikes, the tide of the battle began to turn. Eventually, the insurgents fell back. Ryan and his fellow soldiers had held their ground.
I was in a place called Chowkay, and we heard it over the TAC set that there was a major firefight they were involved in, and heard all the fallen hero missions coming in. It was really tough being in a whole nother valley and not being able to do anything to, I wanted. If I had a helicopter, I would have been there to help. But it's pretty tough listening to all that go down on the radio and not being able to do anything. When I found out what Ryan did, it didn't surprise me because that's just how he was. He was fearless, an epitome of one of the best NCOs I've ever had the privilege to serve with.
He carried himself very well, and you always kind of knew that if Ryan was around that you were going to be okay, and that everything was going to work out for the best.
Most of us are really good at jobs. I was good at my job. But you meet these other guys that are, they're born to do what they're doing. You meet these guys that are amazing warriors. It's in their blood and their genes. That's what Ryan was. That he had the warrior spirit in him, and you don't find that everywhere. He was born for that. He was born, and it's horrible to say, he was born to be on top of that OP.
Sergeant Ryan M. Pitts' extraordinary heroism and selflessness, above and beyond the call of duty, are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, Company C, 2nd Battalion Airborne, 503rd Infantry Regiment, 173rd Airborne Brigade, and the United States Army.